Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. Hey, it's time for a classic guitar rock daily update. And guys, wow, did you hear that? I have no plan. I just felt like I wanted to come on and say good morning. And so here we are. We'll talk about some things. First of all, a backdated plug. Last week we had a conversation with Ross Warner, who wrote an awesome book. I don't have it sitting right here with me. An awesome book about Cheap Trick called American Standard. Cheap Trick from the bars to Budokan and beyond. Great conversation. If you haven't heard that episode, it's available. It's on YouTube. You could probably still find it on Facebook and X as well. And of course, it's a podcast. So if you're a Cheap Trick fan, you got to check that out. Great interview. We're going to have Ross back on. So check that out. Also, plug in the radio station, guys. If you are not listening to the radio station, give it a listen. I really think you'll like it. The folks that do listen to it really like it. And I'm not just saying that. That's based on feedback I've been getting. We've got a pretty cool rotation. We play the classic rock you'd expect to hear, but then there's also some stuff that you wouldn't typically hear. It's great guitar-driven rock from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, mostly 70s and 80s. We don't play a whole lot of 60s, but there is some 60s stuff there too, but mostly 70s and 80s. It's just a lot of fun, and I hope you'll check it out. Listen to it while you're at work. It's easy to do. You can listen to it on Alexa, on your Alexa device. There's really no reason not to listen to it, is all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say. So if you haven't listened to the station, check it out. Go to the website, classicguitarrock.com. That'll link you up to the radio station and the podcast. So it's easy. It's easy to do, and it's a lot of fun. And you know what's cool? And I can't accommodate everyone, right? But I got two guys that have shows on the station. You know how they got shows on the station? They said, "Hey, Jeremy, can I do a show on your station?" I said, "Sure." So, I'm just throwing it out there, right? If you would like to do a show, have an idea for a show you'd like to do that falls into that umbrella of guitar-driven rock of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, let me know. It's the Wild West. We can do whatever we want with the radio station, but I hope you've checked it out. Okay, now this little tidbit I was excited about, guys. You all know that I am a fan of Rat. Love Rat. We have an episode about Rat where JR and I talk about that. Well, Rat has this song. Well, first of all, they have an album from like 1988 called Reach for the Sky. But did you know that they had a song called Reach for the Sky way before that? In fact, it was slated to appear on Out of the Cellar. They had recorded it in 83 to go on Out of the Cellar. Well, it never wound up on the album. But the song is being released. There's a 40th anniversary version of Out of the Cellar that drops in November. And one of the tidbits on that will be this song. I was going to say new song. It's not a new song. It's been around since 83. But this bonus song will be on that new version of Out of the Cellar, and it's called Reach for the Sky. And I just listened to it, and I love it. And I'm like, why didn't that make the album? Because I think it's better than several of the songs on the album. But for whatever reason, it never made it to Out of the Cellar. And our loss then is our gain now, because if you check out the new version of Out of the Cellar that will come out in November, you'll be able to hear the song. Or you could just go listen to it now. I guess you could do that. It's on YouTube. So check that out. When you look at the LA strip bands, by the way, another plug, there's a classic guitar rock time machine that will be coming out soon where we visit the LA strip. Okay. So you'll be able to hear some of these LA strip bands on the time machine. But when I think about the LA strip bands, Rat's my favorite. They are. I know commercially they weren't the most successful, But yeah, I think they kicked the crap out of Motley Crue. Yeah, I got Rat, I got Dawkins slightly below, then Motley's way down there, to be honest. Okay, but yeah, always excited when there's news about Rat. So you can go out to YouTube and check out that song, Reach for the Skies. Great tune. Like I said, not sure why it didn't show up on Out of the Cellar. Another little piece of news, a new documentary called Beatles 64 is set to stream on Disney Plus. So November 29th, it's the 60th anniversary of the band's first trip to America, and there is a documentary about the whole thing. Beatlemania. You can relive Beatlemania all over again. So that'll be kind of a cool thing. November 29th is when that happens. Over the weekend, Stevie Nicks appeared on Saturday Night Live. It was her first performance, I think, in over 40 years on Saturday Night Live. And I didn't see it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'll go out and try and watch it. I haven't yet. But that's cool. Stevie Nicks, no one sounds like Stevie Nicks, right? Very unique voice. So she was on Saturday Night Live. And also, this is from an interview on Ultimate Classic Rock. Robert Smith of The Cure, actually the interview was with The Times, but I'm reading about it on Ultimate Classic Rock. He says he's got 5 more years. He will retire in 5 years if he makes it that long, is what he says. I had no idea he's 65. He's 65 years old. During an interview with The Times, the 65-year-old singer discussed his evolving views on mortality and how that comes across in The Cure's music. So that's interesting. He says, quote, "Our songs always had a fear of mortality. I don't feel my age at all, but I'm aware of it. And when you get older, that fear becomes more real. Death becomes more every day. When you are younger, you romanticize death, but then it happens to your family and friends. I'm a different person to the last record, and I wanted to put that across. It can be trite. People could say, oh, we're all going to die. Surprise me. But I try to find some emotional connection to that idea. Don't we all, right? And I know, not to be gloomy, but I know that's kind of a recurring theme on the podcast, right? As we're talking about music and artists that are, for the most part, into their 70s and even 80s by now, many of the bands. So mortality just becomes part of the equation. And I say it all the time, a lot of these bands that we're enjoying, they won't be around long. So, go see them while you can. Robert Smith says, quote, "I'm 70 and 2029, and that's it. That really is it. If I make it that far, that's it." End quote. So, but yeah, that's just life. No pun intended, right? Our artists, our favorite bands, they're getting older. And my gosh, I hate to think about this. 10 years from now, how many of these artists that I'm playing on my radio station or talking about on the podcast, how many will be left? So what's my point? My point is seize the day, right? Go out and see these bands, celebrate their music, enjoy their music while you can, because we're only here for a limited time, right? We're only here for a limited time. Foghat. This is one of those bands that drummer Roger Earl, I think, is the only original member with Foghat, but they have a new single. Foghat has written and recorded a new song dedicated to original lead singer and guitarist Lonesome Dave Peverett. The single is humorously titled after his familiar stage introduction, "On Tonsils and Sneakers, I'm Lonesome Dave." Okay. On Tonsils and Sneakers arrives on streaming services today, which was actually Friday, I think, because I'm a few days behind. So you can check that out. Foghat. Foghat is one of those bands. Do you have bands that you just kind of have an emotional connection to them? They're such a strong part of your memory. There's a nostalgia factor. For me, Foghat is one of those. And it's not the big Foghat hits, right? I mean, we all know Slow Ride and Fool for the City. Great songs, great band. My Foghat memory is around their 1980 or 81 album, which was not a successful album, Girls to Chat and Boys to Bounce. You ever hear that album? It's the red album. It's got a little piece of paper on the front where it says Girls to Chat, Boys to Bounce on it, and then the rest of the album is just red. So my friend Lyle and I used to terrorize the countryside listening to that cassette in his car, blasting that out. So many great memories around that album. So much so that I took a couple of those songs that weren't hits by any stretch of the imagination, but they're in normal rotation on Classic Guitar Rock Radio. That's the stuff I'm talking about, where you'll hear stuff that you wouldn't normally hear, right? And that's the beauty of owning your own radio station, right? You can play whatever you want. So I have a couple tracks from Girls to Chat and Boys to Bounce on there. And you know what's ironic is once the whole streaming, once you started to buy music digitally, I went back and I bought the, downloads of so many of these albums that I grew up with. And this album in particular, I mean, I remember just loving every single song on that album. And when I actually went back after 30 years and listened to it, I'm like, wow, this is not that good of an album. But it's the nostalgia part, right? It's the nostalgia part. So anyways, a new single from Foghat. It's available now. You can check that out. Oh, by the way, on the weekends on the CGR radio, we have a show called The Well. It's hosted by Dennis Hoagland. It's a cool show. So what he does is it's a 4-hour show. It's on Saturday and Sunday. And so for the first 3 hours of the show, he just chooses a decade. We're going to play everything from the 80s this week, or everything from, it's all 80s or all 70s or whatever. But then the last hour of every show is what he calls the whole hog. And the whole hog is where he plays an album in its entirety. So Saturday I'm listening, and the show he plays, or the album he plays, is Who's Next by The Who. And to actually sit and hear these albums in their entirety is unbelievable. So for instance, in fact, I want to look it up here. Track listing. Okay. So as I listen, I'm driving around running errands, but I intentionally, stretched out my errands a little longer so I could hear the whole album. There are so many great songs on that album. So many, and it came out in 1971, right? And when you think, if you've been hearing these songs for the last 50 years on classic rock radio, you kind of get immune to this fact. But you think about the year 1971, and then you think about, let me read you the songs that you might not know, but if you listen to classic rock, every single these songs I'm going to read off. This is all from one album. Okay. Baba O'Reilly. Okay. That's the Teenage Wasteland song. We all know that song. Bargain. Okay. That gets played all the time. Going Mobile, Behind Blue Eyes, Won't Get Fooled Again. All of those are on this album. What a phenomenal album. And then that was on Sunday. He played that. I think on Saturday he played Hotel California. Same thing. To sit down. And that's what doesn't happen anymore. I'm talking about myself, is now that we stream, we we listen to songs one at a time. We buy them one at a time. But in the good old days, we'd buy an album and we'd sit down and we'd listen to the whole album all the way through. And that's what I like about the whole hog is you even if you are driving around in your car, getting to hear a whole album as they were intended to be listened to is really cool. But man, what a phenomenal album, that Who's Next album. Phenomenal album. All right, let's see if there's any more news here that we have to talk about. Okay. This is compelling, isn't it? Listening to Jeremy Scroll. I do have a comment here from Eric. I used to sing Going Mobile to my daughters when they started crawling. There you go. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for checking us out today, too, by the way. Yeah, just a great song. That's a great album. One more item here. James Hetfield said, now this is an interesting, let's think about this. James Hetfield insists Metallica won't ever be a legacy band. Now, what does he mean by this? Despite an impressive back catalog and incredible rock history, James Hetfield insists Metallica will never become a legacy band. He says, quote, the fact that the 72 Seasons album is well received and some of the songs that we're playing live work and they kind of fit seamlessly in with all the catalog, all the albums we have, we're not afraid of playing new songs, but we're not overindulging in it as well. We know people want to hear the best of, and you've got to challenge them to listen to some of the new stuff as well. And then he says, we certainly don't want to be a legacy band that just plays its greatest hits and then that's it. Playing new material is all part of it. So let's talk about this. Because on the one hand, I love what he's saying, but on the other hand, that can be problematic. Okay. So now Metallica has the luxury on their latest album, 72 Seasons. A lot of people bought it. A lot of people listened to it, right? Sadly, many of the classic bands, when they release a new album now, just because everything's different, radio's different, the music industry is completely different. Most of the bands that you and I like, the classic rock bands, they release new material and it doesn't really get played. And so, and I'm just picking a band at random, Saxon. Okay, Saxon, great band, great new wave of British heavy metal band. I've seen them live a few times. They released an album last year, Hellfire and Damnation. That is an awesome record. It is seriously a really good album. Check it out. You can stream it, go to Spotify and listen to it. I mean, the whole album is really, it's a phenomenal album. Yet it's not, no radio station plays it. So you would have no way of hearing it unless you seek it out, right? Unless you're a diehard Saxon fan, you probably would not be able to hear it anywhere. So if you go to a show and see Saxon, chances are you don't know their new stuff. Again, if you're a diehard fan, you would. But so if I'm Saxon, if I'm Biff Byford, right? How much time do I want to devote to new music for a concert, right? Because you know the fans are there to hear Wheels of Steel. They're there to hear Saxon's greatest hits. I saw Judas Priest not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. We talked about it in an episode last week. Judas Priest played, I think, 2 songs from the new album. Okay. And the rest, of course, is Judas. They have a massive catalog. They got all kinds of stuff. So is Judas Priest a legacy band? When people go to see Judas Priest, are they wanting to hear new stuff? I'm just being honest. Do the Priest fans want to hear them play new stuff? Probably not. I think Metallica, just because an album, they actually do get played on the radio. At least the rock radio probably plays some new Metallica. Not sure they did with Judas Priest or with Saxon, right? So I get his point, but at the same time, Metallica not quite in the same category as a Priest or a Saxon in terms of the pressure to stick with the hits, if that makes sense. But that's very interesting. So, but guys, I have to tell you, that sax, it's a year old now. Hellfire and Damnation, it's really good. Let me tell you about an idea I have. Again, I don't want this to just be plugging my radio station, right? But I am going to plug the radio station. One of the ideas that we're talking about is doing a show where we're playing new music from classic bands. Okay, that's one of the things we're talking about. My friend Will checking in. Hi, Will. Good to see you. Little behind the scenes about Will. Okay, we're mighty class of 85. Graduated in Oklahoma, class of 85, and Will and a couple of my buddies tasked with the 40-year reunion coming up next summer. So, Will, I'm probably going to come stay at your house. Is that okay? So I'm going to the reunion, right? But Will is actually there and helping to put together a reunion. So that's a big task. Of course, Will not allowed to talk on this show. That's a policy we have because he has incriminating evidence. But I do say hi to Will when he shows up. So thank you, Will, very much. Yeah. Yeah, he said, I expected that. Yes. Oh, I think he's talking about he expected that I would stay at his house. Yeah, I will stay at his house. And his wife, Rachel, is a really good cook and much nicer than Will, by the way. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, Will. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, the idea that we're thinking about for this show is we're going to play new music from classic bands. Because there's nowhere you can go unless you're looking for it to hear new music. And you've heard me vent about frontier music before. Frontier music is a label based in, it's either Italy or Spain, that their whole, it's great. They put out great records. So there's an interesting approach they have. They're either signing legacy bands to put out new music. Valtulini, he says hello, and he's also giving us some info about frontier music. He says they're from Italy. Okay, that's right. So what they do is they put out albums of either legacy bands that are putting out new music or new bands that are kind of in the classic rock, melodic rock vein. So I've heard a lot of great albums from new artists that play great music that doesn't really get played on the radio, right? And then kind of a third thing they do, they'll kind of assemble groups, right? They'll get existing musicians together to make albums. Many of them are really good. Revolution Saints, perfect example. They're awesome. That's what's his name? Dean Castronovo, the drummer who's currently on tour with Journey. Well, he's got a band called Revolution Saints. The first incarnation was Dean, Doug Aldrich, and Jack Blades. They did a few albums that were awesome. And now it's Dean with Joel Hoekstra and dude from Dokken, bass player from Dokken. His name's escaping me. Jeff Pilson, right? So they'll bring these bands together, make these records. Tokyo Motor Fist, another great band that they put together. And they're awesome. These are awesome albums that are coming out. They don't really get played on radio. Sadly, Frontier doesn't, They don't put together tours in the US. I mean, they'll do like a show in Europe where the bands can play once or twice, but so there's not really a promotional arm. So the thought is, hey, let's have a show where we are playing new music from classic sounding bands, whether it's legacy bands with new music, or maybe even just a new band that's kind of in the classic rock vein, and we'll play some of that music. So that's one of the things we're talking about. I think it would be awesome. By the way, if you're from a record company and would like to play your music on that show, reach out to me and let me know, because that's one of the things we got to get the music. So we got to get on like a distribution with these record companies to get their music. And of course, my partner in crime, JR, I was just thinking, dude, we got to get together. We haven't done a show with JR in forever. And that's not JR's fault. That's just my fault. But we got to get together and do a show with JR. So I'll be reaching out to you, JR. Thanks for saying hi. But you probably should get back to work. Okay, your boss might. Oh, JR is the boss. Never mind. Okay, I cracked myself up. So, email me, guys. Shoot me an email. If you got ideas for the radio station, if you'd like to be on the radio station, if there's songs you want to hear, shoot me an email, classicguitarrock@mail.com. And of course, you can visit the website, classicguitarrock.com, for all the latest information. That's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll do it again next time. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.